Calling all gearheads, your ride is here.
We're all just big kids, and these cars are just like a reflection of what you liked when you were in high school.
Tail fins and two-seaters, bugs and Bugattis, race cars and rare beauties.
Nuts are here today, baby.
Smitten by the station wagon.
They really don't get any respect.
Captivated by the Corvair. Stuck on the Stanley Steamer.
I decided I just had to have one of my own.
Is there any love like mobile love? Cruisin' to the car show. Next on Chronicle.
Nostalgia is huge, and nowhere is it more evident than in the fields of New England. From spring to fall, the landscape is full of antique cars.
We're all just big kids, and these cars are just like a reflection of what you liked when you were in high school.
In the Green Mountains of Vermont, you'll find one of the Northeast's largest gatherings, the Antique and Classic Car Meet in Stowe, hosted by the Vermont Automobile Enthusiasts.
We're in Mud City. We rained all last night, but we're still trying to put on a car show here today.
This show attracts unique and rare vehicles from the eastern United States and Canada. Over 800 examples of automotive history. Everything from old police cars, telephone trucks, even armored tanks.
Yeah, one that surprised me today, this show, I haven't seen them yet, was a 1905 Oldsmobile. And then we got a high wheeler.
The high wheeler is owned by Hans Meyer of Granby, Quebec.
This is an international high wheeler. It's a 1914. Runs good, but go not fast.
Head out to a car show on a Sunday and you may run into these guys, the father and son team of the Sweet Chariots radio show.
With us now is Evan Ide, who has authored the Packard Motor Car Company beautiful black and white photo book of
John Swerdick and his son Peter broadcast live from car shows on WBIX AM 1060 in Boston.
Every week, we reach out to classic car clubs, collectors, and car nuts that are everywhere.
Car nuts are here today, baby.
Mud nuts.
Every week, John and Peter search for the ultimate vehicle, handing out awards along the way.
Jim and Nancy Rogers are our second Sweet Chariots choices, and they own a gorgeous, all-original 1966 Chrysler Imperial convertible.
We have an award for you.
Oh, yeah, this is our Ultimate Vehicle Award.
I really appreciate you preserving a piece of real classy Chrysler history.
Well, let me know when you want to sell it, too. I'll up my offer. I will up my offer, you know. I'm a motivated buyer.
We try to reach out to the car clubs, the events that are going on. We try to cover them because I honestly feel that there's nobody doing a show like that. What kind of cars do you own?
Well, the only thing I got running is a 1917 white fire truck.
Really? Wow, is it on the field here?
Yeah, it's right over the knoll right
the
there.
red one there?
The red one.
The opportunity for families to stay together is really enhanced when they get together around old cars, whether they restore them or just enjoy driving them.
Or going to shows and seeing them.
And having fun, or going to shows and seeing them. And take a kid to a car show is a great website. SweetChariots.com, of course, is the best website because our webmaster next to me links just about anything and everything he can find to our website.
Welcome back to Sweet Chariots and the search for the ultimate field position.
Car shows aren't just limited to weekends. During the summer, you'll find an event every night of the week somewhere in New England. They're called cruise nights, and in Rhode Island, the king of the cruise is Cruisin' Bruce Palmer.
Why don't you go pick on the guy with the javelin?
The hobby has grown remarkably in the last 10 to 12 years. The number of cars and trucks and station wagons in the antique hobby is just amazing now compared to a decade ago.
High in the low and mid 80s. A fair weekend should be on the way. In Providence right now, we're at 76 degrees with bright clouds at the B.
Bruce Palmer, B101.
Cruisin' Bruce Palmer is a radio personality for Oldies Radio B101 FM in Providence.
Every Thursday night, we do the B101 cruise at the Blue Onion Diner in Woonsocket on Route 122. Big crowd.
5 nights a week, he races from the studio to host a different cruise somewhere in the Ocean State. There's a strong bond between Oldies Radio and old cars.
It seems to be an unbreakable relationship because people that like old things tend to be very consistent in their likes.
Got flyers on upcoming car events. As you know, there are quite a few scheduled.
Even on this rainy night, cars still turn out at the new retro-style Blue Onion Diner in Woonsocket. Thursday Cruise Night has helped make this Rhode Island Monthly Magazine's choice for the state's best new diner.
To me, the parking lot that has a collection of old cars is the old neighborhood stoop. People don't sit and talk with their neighbors. In many cases, they don't even really know them anymore. Their neighbors are now their fellow hobbyists. And believe me, it's more fun to go to a place where there are going to be hundreds of people that share the same passion you do, that want to talk about the same things you do, and you can sit there and become famous friends with someone you've never met before within 5 minutes and spend the rest of the night talking to him or her about how much fun this hobby is.
Cruisin' Bruce Palmer doesn't just talk cars, he lives the life. Back at home, he gave us a tour of his growing collection.
I have a disease which is even worse than the old car hobby. It's station wagon lover's disease. I have 3 station wagons. A friend of mine once described them as the Rodney Dangerfield of the old car hobby, and it's true. They really don't get any respect. This is the pride of the fleet. If the government were going to come after me tomorrow and tell me that I couldn't have old cars anymore, this is the one that I'd chain my body to. It's a '69 Ford Torino GT Fastback, and if you look carefully here, you will see authentic New England bugs that have been sucked in through the hood scoop, and there's nothing you can do to stop them from collecting here, so I leave them as my trophy room, as it were.
Coming up next, speaking of bugs.
Volkswagens, they're not a hobby, they're a disease.
You don't have to be a millionaire to collect antique cars. But if you want one of these, you will have to be. This is the Concours d'Elegance at the New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire, part of the vintage celebration held here every August. Here you'll see some of the finest restored early automobiles in North America. But that's what's great about a car show. You don't have to own them to appreciate them. These cars were the world's first attempt to move away from the horse and buggy, and they did it with style. New England has its own place in automotive history, and you'll find it in Kingfield, Maine at the Stanley Museum, dedicated to the history of Maine's Stanley brothers, inventors of a car not powered by gasoline, but run on steam.
Very inventive men, very, very ingenuitive. They built Stanleys mainly as a pastime. They did it for the fun of it. They made their first in 1897, and that one they built for themselves, and they started mass producing them in 1905.
Travel to Kingfield and you'll learn the whole story.
You'd see cars, you'd see photography, you'd see violins, you'd see airbrush portraits, pictures of not just the Stanley brothers, but the whole family.
Back in Massachusetts, you'll find the Stanley factory still standing on the Newton-Watertown line. But you won't find any Stanley Steamers here. They're rare, prized collectibles now. One of the greatest collections in New England is owned by Brent Campbell.
My grandfather originally worked for the Stanley factory. Later on, when I was old enough, I decided I just had to have one of my own. The thing about a Stanley is they're very different from a gas car. There are, for example, no clutches, no spark plugs, no transmission. It didn't need to be cranked. You have to operate it. You have to make sure that you replenish the water level in the boiler. You have to make sure that you hold the steam pressure. And the way the car performs has a great deal to do with not only how well it's, shall we say, dialed in, but to some degree the expertise of the operator. This is a 1908 Stanley, known in the sales brochure as a gentleman's speedy roadster. It is, in my opinion, the Corvette of Stanleys, if you will. This is a 1908 Model K semi-racer. It was built in the catalog for someone who was perhaps quite wealthy and wanted a very fast car. As far as we can determine, only 25 cars were made. Fortunately, there are 3 surviving. This is one of 2 with the original body. This is a 1912 Stanley. The Stanley had gone from a wooden body to an all-aluminum handmade body. These bodies were made in Amesbury, Mass.
But the Stanley steam car became an anachronism in its own time. The company went out of business in 1924.
They just couldn't compete with the gas car, and the steam car wasn't keeping up.
Would you like to own a piece of automotive history that's still affordable? How about an air-cooled rear-engine car? There's the original Volkswagen Beetle, or its American competition, the Chevy Corvair. You can compare the two at the annual Volkswagen Fair held at the Heberts Candy Mansion in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts.
Volkswagens, they're not a hobby, they're a disease. Once you get into them, you're into them. They're great.
Known for its deceptively cute looks, the Volkswagen Beetle had dark beginnings. It was the brainchild of Adolf Hitler, who, legend has it, said the car should look like a beetle. Today, more Volkswagen Beetles have been made than any car in history. Over the last 50 years, more than 21 million were produced, and it beat out the Model T Ford for the title Car of the Century. In the same field, you'll find America's answer to the Beetle, another controversial car, the Corvair.
An early model sort of looks like an upside-down bathtub.
In 1965, consumer advocate Ralph Nader trashed these cars in his book Unsafe at Any Speed.
Ralph was writing about the handling characteristics on the very early Corvairs. There was some truth to it. If you didn't take care of the tire pressure in the Corvair, there was a tendency to get some funny handling. A lot of people like to think that Ralph Nader killed the Corvair, but it was raw power. The V8 engine came in with the Mustang, and people wanted to go fast, and the Corvair couldn't go as fast as a V8.
Nostalgia has been described as memory with the pain removed. That would qualify Volkswagens and Corvairs as pure nostalgia.
Coming up next, restoring Ralph Lauren's Roadster.
Not only is it hard to find parts for classic cars, it's getting harder every day to find skilled craftsmen to do restoration work. But in Essex, Massachusetts, you'll find one of the world's premier automobile restoration companies. At Paul Russell and Company, they don't simply restore a vehicle, they remanufacture it, working on cars like Mercedes, Porsche, Jaguar, and Bugatti. This level of quality is only for an elite few.
The clientele tends to be, to really generalize, from 40 to 65-year-old captains of industry, movie people. Ralph Lauren's one of our biggest clients and supporters and has done wonders for us, even referring other people to us. We do everything from oil changes to ground up every last nut and bolt restorations. But if a car comes in for a restoration, it's 3,000 hours roughly for a mid-50s European sports car. And in a 300 SL, that translates to about $250,000 to $300,000 for the restoration. But that's not just a paint job and upholstery. This is taking the wiper motor apart piece by piece. It's actually more remanufacturing than restoration.
Paul Russell and Company restored this custom 1930 vehicle. Originally built for an Italian count, it is now owned by Ralph Lauren.
When You have an opportunity to work on a car like this, and it's a great calling card.
As a matter of fact, we're so busy right now, we don't even look for work. We don't advertise for the most part. Most of it's word of mouth.
The plan was, do great work, and people will find you.
Okay, maybe you can't afford an award-winning car, but you can see them in action at the Vintage Celebration at New Hampshire International Speedway. Here you'll find some of history's greatest racing vehicles. Track co-owner Bob Bahre has spent his life around these cars and drivers. He started this event to celebrate racing and the history of the automobile.
Oh, I love to see it. I was down here this morning about 6:30 and walked all through the garages and looked at the cars over there. And, you know, I mean, that's when, to me, don't get me wrong, now racing is kind of our business. But as far as like the Indy cars and stuff, this was the old real racing when they had these kind of cars, in my opinion.
Well, this is probably the largest gathering of vintage race cars in the United States today. We probably expect in excess of 150 cars. There's probably at least that here now. With this vintage deal, a lot of the older drivers come, and we have a good time with them. They tell us stories from when they were running and things that they did, and there's all kinds. There's bums and bosses, both ends of the spectrum. We all love them.
Walt Beletsky spent nearly 50 years building race cars in Bethany, Connecticut.
Used to race in pastures in Huntington, Connecticut and Monroe, Connecticut. I bought a Corvette that hit a tree, so I asked my friend if we build a race car with the engine, and he said yes, and that was the first one, Chevrolet. I was first in the East with a Chevrolet engine. It's my great-grandson. So I'm getting too old, I'm getting to be 88 years old. I think it's time to hang it up.
You're ahead of your time.
That's right.
Today.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're ahead of your time on that.
Bob Valpy of Center Harbor, New Hampshire, is a well-known collector who developed the interest as a child.
My grandmother, when I was a young boy, used to take me to a local antique car museum. And when I was about 14 years old, she sent me a photograph of that green car and said, "You'd look great in that." And I believed her. Spent the next 30 years looking for it.
To be really successful in racing today, you need more than cubic inches, you need cubic dollars. And when you start talking about dollars, it kind of takes away the fun. We used to do it for pretty cheap money, but we had an awful lot of fun doing it.
Dick Berggren from Speedway Illustrated has come here seeking stories for his magazine.
This is where the sport came from, and to understand where you are, you have to have some idea of where you have been. And this is a good way to tell where you've been. I mean, you look at these cars and you talk to some of these people, and it really does put your 2003 in proper perspective.
Cars can be restored and preserved, but the stories of those who made racing history are fleeting.
There's just so much history, and we've got to capture it very quickly because folks are, frankly, dying off of old age.
In the end, the legacy of those who created automotive history lives on in the vehicles so lovingly preserved. Classic cars that transcend time to connect us all to the past. And there's still a lot of fun.